Rockaways Productions presents The Casey Waters Show, Episode 94, Need to Know, UFOs, the Military, and Intelligence by Timothy Good. Hello, I'm your host, Casey Waters. Tonight I will review the book Need to Know, UFOs, Military and Intelligence by Timothy Good. UFOs have been around for a long time. Basically, there has been sightings and evidence of UFO activities dating back towards the dawn of mankind, such as cave paintings depicting UFO-like craft and their occupants. So, with evidence of UFOs going back for so long, and many civilian encounters that I know of that weren't mentioned in the book or only glossed over, makes me realize that there's a lot more out there than I probably know. There's many encounters with UFOs and occasionally with the aliens who occupy them. Now, the author chose to focus on military encounters instead of focusing on civilian encounters. There are some startling episodes in the book where the UFOs are concerned with monitoring the stockpile of nuclear weapons, both in the USA and in the USSR back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. So, there's a lot of information in this book. As I said, it has a lot of detailed accounts about military aircraft and military personnel encountering UFOs. Often, they fired upon them, and they never had any success, or it was at least very rare. A couple of UFOs have been reported to crash, such as the Roswell incident in 1947. So, now, I guess to get a good feel for the book, it's probably a good idea to read from it. So now, let's read from Need to Know, UFOs, Military and Intelligence by Timothy Good. Now, let's read from Need to Know, UFOs, the Military and Intelligence by Timothy Good. This book is recently published in 2007. This show being filmed on December 1st, 2007. So now, let's go to page 338, towards the bottom of the page. Thanks to Citizens Against UFO Secrecy cause, some UFO-related documents originating with the NSA were released in January 1980. The agency admitted that many more were exempt from disclosure. Later that year, NSA Representative Eugene Yates admitted in a court hearing that the NSA had found many documents on UFOs that were relevant to the FOIA request. Lawyer Peter Gersten, representing cause under the terms of the Freedom of Information Act, filed suit against the NSA in the U.S. District Court, Washington, D.C., to obtain 135 documents and then admitted to being withheld by the agency. After studying a 21-page above top-secret affidavit in camera, Judge Giselle ruled that the agency was fully justified in withholding the documents in their entirety. The case was dismissed. Now, let's go to page 352. Hold on here. All right. Thousands of reports involving millions of witnesses were funneled to Sokolov, including 40 or more incidents in which Russian warplanes engaged UFOs. Reports television journalist George Knapp, who interviewed Sokolov in Moscow. 3 of those planes crashed, and 2 pilots were killed. In one disturbing case, UFOs maneuvered over a Russian nuclear missile base and manipulated the launch codes. That incident, which occurred on the 4th of October 1982 at an intercontinental ballistic ICBM silo at Byryakovich, Soviet Ukraine, brought the world to the brink of nuclear war. At around 1800, soldiers and villagers saw a large, geometrically shaped object, apparently nearly 3,000 feet in diameter, hovering in the sky over the silo. Lieutenant Colonel Vladimir Platonev, a missile engineer, described the UFO as having a completely even surface with no visible portholes. Simultaneously, inside the missile silo, an emergency warning light indicated that a nuclear missile had switched to launch mode. The communications officer said that somehow something had entered the correct code, reported Knapp. But Moscow had not ordered a launch, nor had any personnel in the bunker touched the control panel. For 15 agonizing seconds, technicians frantically scrambled to stop the launch. Then, without explanation, the launch sequence was aborted. No faults with the equipment were found by investigators from Institute 22. Now, let's go to page 374 towards the bottom and continuing on to page 375. Without consciously realizing it, my gaze caught the eyes of the being. His eyes were glowing red and appeared as 2 swirling pools of liquid. They were pulling me in deeper and deeper. All at once, giant portions of information came pounding into my head. These were like thoughtgrams, large blocks of information over and over again, like someone hitting me over the head with a hammer. I was also becoming dizzy and slightly nauseated. Dr. L, undoubtedly you survived this ordeal. Can you tell us what was in those thought messages? MP, all that I'm willing to tell you at this time is what the creature told me about human beings. I also want to tell you he downloaded a tremendous amount of knowledge into my head. It caused me to have headaches lasting for over 2 weeks following the event. Essentially, he told me his race felt very sorry for the human beings for basically 2 reasons. The first is that all humans have the same potential and abilities to perform the very same things his race could do. Those things we find so marvelous and magical, but did not know how to do. For example, he told me that in cases where there is injury or disease of the body, it would not be necessary to confine one of his species to a special treatment facility, such as the one he was confined in at the moment. He told me they either individually or collectively could produce all the healing necessary to repair their bodies. The second reason they felt sorry for us was that we did not seem to realize we were spiritual beings only living in a temporary shell, and we were totally disconnected from our spiritual self. Yes, this previous reading involves a reptilian creature that was operated on in Brazil in 1996. But what I find interesting is his perspective on humankind and how he felt sorry for us because we were disconnected from our spiritual nature. So, now let's go back a little bit here. And we're going to go to page 292. This happened in 1977. It all began when we tried to understand the nature of certain underwater objects that followed our submarines. At times, they even anticipated our maneuvers. Initially, we thought they were American devices. One day, such an object came to the surface in a rather spectacular fashion. One of our icebreakers was working its way in the Arctic Ocean when a brilliant spherical craft suddenly broke out of the ice and flew up vertically, showering the vessel with fragments of ice. All the sailors on deck and the officers on the bridge saw it, and it was hard to deny the hole in the ice. Yes. Now, let's go to page 368 of Need to Know, UFOs, the Military and Intelligence by Timothy Good. The Devil's Graveyard. In late 1981, incidents of objects flying in and out of the Amazon River were reported some 400 miles to the west of Coares, in an area known as the Devil's Graveyard. All the evidence points to a base beneath the Amazon, said Charles Tucker, director of the Indiana-based International UFO Investigative Bureau, which had led an expedition to the area to investigate reports of objects which were flying in and out of the river, 12 miles wide and 200 feet deep in places. These objects had buzzed fishing vessels and passenger boats so close that witnesses had seen water dripping from the metallic skin of the strange craft. They had burned a 37-year-old female farm worker with a beam of light, necessitating hospital treatment, and knocked out a hunter with a shock from a powerful light beam after he tried to shoot at one of them. So now, let's go to page 422. During a dinner party in 1989, an executive branch employee revealed to Anthony L. Kimmery, the award-winning editor and journalist referenced earlier, who covers global security, intelligence, and defense issues, that he had seen a top-secret National Security Council report in which high-level references to the National Security Agency were made. The report had been prepared as a briefing paper for the new administration of President George H.W. Bush at the Department of State's Bureau of Intelligence and Research (INR) office. Allegedly, the report referred to the operation of a government facility dealing specifically with the alien situation located somewhere along the northern New Mexico border. The source said the report indicated that this facility was deep underground, writes Kimmery, and had to do with the development of a supercomputer along the lines of artificial intelligence, utilizing alien technology apparently provided by alien beings themselves, who, the source said, I got the impression were running the show. As mentioned in Chapter 6, I have learned that the facility is, or was, located in the nuclear weapons storage area within the Manzano Mountains. So now, let's go to page 207 of Need to Know, UFOs, the Military, and Intelligence by Timothy Good. Towards the bottom of the page. Take us to your leader. Why? I am often asked, do aliens not contact our leaders? It would seem that they have. Rumors persist that on the 20th of February 1954, President Dwight D. Eisenhower was spirited away during a Palm Spring vacation for a meeting with aliens at the top-secret Edwards, then Muroc, Air Force Base, California. Desmond Leslie, a former RAF pilot and co-author of an early book on the subject, learned from a USAF officer that a disc, estimated to be 100 feet in diameter, had landed on the runway on a certain day. Men returning from leave were suddenly not allowed back on the base. The disc was allegedly housed under guard in Hangar 27, and Eisenhower was taken to see it. Circumstantial evidence suggests that something extraordinary did indeed happen that day. Gabriel Green, an American researcher, spoke to a military officer who claims to have witnessed the arrival of the craft at Muroc. At the time, I was engaged in firing practice under the command of a general, said the officer. We were shooting at a number of targets when suddenly 5 UFOs came flying overhead. The general ordered all the batteries to fire at the craft. We did so, but our fire had no effect on them. We stopped firing, and then we saw the UFOs land at one of the base's big hangars. 2 other witnesses, Don Johnson and Paul Umbrello, also claimed to have witnessed one of the disc-shaped craft near Muroc on the evening of the 20th of February. Lord Clancarty, better known as Brinsley Leuport French, the pioneer UFO author, spoke to a USAF test pilot, a retired colonel, who claimed to have been present at Muroc during the Eisenhower visit. The pilot says he was one of 6 people at the meeting. Lord Clancarty told a reporter 5 alien craft landed at the base. 2 were cigar-shaped and 3 were saucer-shaped. The aliens looked human-like, but not exactly, he said, adding that they had the same proportions as humans and were able to breathe our atmosphere. They did not say where they came from. The aliens spoke English and supposedly informed the president that they wanted to start an educational program for the people of Earth in order to make mankind more aware of their presence here. Unnerved, Eisenhower reportedly indicated to them that he did not think the world was ready, that such a revelation would create a very difficult situation for everybody. According to the test pilot, the aliens seemed to understand. They indicated that they would continue to make further isolated contacts with humans, a demonstration of their ability to overcome gravity and to make their craft invisible ensued. This disturbed the president greatly, said the pilot, because now none of us could see them, although we knew they were there. Others present said to have included Franklin Allen of the Hearst newspapers, Cardinal James McIntyre, bishop and head of the Catholic Church in Los Angeles, and Edwin Nurse of the Brookings Institution, who had been President Truman's financial advisor. The security check before the event is stated to have taken about 6 hours. Whatever the truth, Eisenhower, who had been staying with his friend Paul Roy Helms at the Smoke Tree Ranch in Palm Springs, ostensibly for a golfing holiday, disappeared for 4 hours on the 20th of February, leading to pandemonium when he failed to turn up for a press conference. The official explanation? Eisenhower had lost a cap on a tooth, necessitating a trip to a local dentist. No evidence for the dental trip, such as White House memos, has ever emerged. I have learned from a reliable source that sometime after the Eisenhower incident, 2 scientists were taken by jeep to a meeting with aliens somewhere in the desert. A friend of the source rode shotgun in the jeep, together with his buddy in the military. At the rendezvous point was a landed disc, and the scientists went aboard. Supposedly, a discussion on transfer of technology ensued for a couple of hours. At the time, the source's friend worked for a small military detachment and held Alpha clearance. He later became a CIA officer. No additional details are available to me. However, the information tends to corroborate what I have learned from other sources, that since the 1940s, communications with an elite group of U.S. military and scientific intelligence personnel have been established, and that there has been a transfer of technology, that an arranged meeting with a president of the United States might have subsequently have taken place seems entirely logical to me, given the potentially grave nuclear situation facing Earth. Another alien encounter in 1954 was reported by Air Marshal Sir Peter Horsley, a former pilot who flew numerous types of aircraft during and following the Second World War, such as the Mosquito, Spitfire, Meteor, Hunter, Lightning, and Vulcan. Sir Peter had been Deputy Commander-in-Chief, RAF Strike Command, and spent 7 years in the service of Her Majesty the Queen, and H.R.H. Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, as equerry. It was during this later period that Sir Peter had an experience that he had a profound effect on him. A 2-hour meeting with an apparently extraterrestrial human being, as revealed in his autobiography, Sounds from Another Room, and published in an extensive account in My Alien Base. Sir Peter shared his interest in the UFO mystery with Air Chief Marshal Sir Arthur Barrett, who introduced him to a British Army friend, a General Martin, who believed that aliens were trying to warn us of the perils of nuclear war. One day in 1954, Martin invited Sir Peter to meet a Mrs. Markham that night at her London flat in Chelsea. Martin did not attend the meeting. There, in a dimly lit room, Sir Peter was introduced to a mysterious Mr. Janus. Without any preliminaries, writes Sir Peter, Mr. Janus dived straight into the deep end by asking me to tell him all I knew about flying saucers. At the end, I asked Janus what his interest was. He answered me quite simply, I would like to meet the Duke of Edinburgh. Somewhere taken aback, Sir Peter replied that this would not be easy. I was about to add, particularly for security reasons, but thought better of it. Here, the strangeness of it all started. The man's extraordinary ability to read my thoughts. Asked why he wanted to meet Prince Philip, Janus replied, he is a man of great vision, who believes strongly in the proper relationship between man and nature, which will prove of great importance in future galactic harmony. Janus began by pointing out that man was now striving to break his earthly bonds and travel to moon and the planets beyond. Man, in his journeys through the universe, may find innumerable centers of culture far more ancient than his own. He will discover a wealth of experiences infinitely more startling and beautiful than can be imagined. An infinite variety of agency and forces as yet unknown. Even other universes with different space and time formula. Man invading space for material gain or personal glorification alone will gain nothing. The earth is going through a dark age at the moment, Janus went on. Material possessions count more than a man's soul. Like a child, man is preoccupied with his technological toys, which he believes will bring him riches and happiness. This shows up in the superficiality of his culture and a careless disregard for nature. In his greedy quest for more complex machines, man is prepared to sacrifice almost anything, his natural environment, animals, and even his fellow humans. The dreadful specter of blowing up his world hardly makes him falter in this headlong rush. Janus expounded on Casey Waters Show. Producer Casey Waters. Graphic editing Judson Laird. Please note our new email address, CaseyWaters2 @CaseyWaters.com.